Idea Coaches here, talking about UFC Fights 8, in particular, the fight between Jake Ellenberger versus Rory McDonald. Now, my way on the weight class video, I picked Ellenberger, and Ellenberger did lose, but this had to be one of the most boring #1 contender title fights I've seen in quite some time. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that the UFC has not evolved its ranking system. You know, ever since the UFC's got the Fox deal nearly 2 years ago, they've kind of elevated into what they're getting their hands into. You know, they have the FX deal, the Fuel TV deal, and a couple other things are going on. They're legitimizing MMA as a whole, you know, putting on the same, you know, in the same conversation with, you know, the NFL, the, you know, NBA, and so forth. McDonald Ellenberger was so fucking boring. And I think I know why. I've been watching UFC, you know, not since its inception, but for a very long time. And it kind of reminds me of Kenny Florian. Now, Kenny Florian these days is kind of made fun of because he had to drop all these different weight classes. He was a middleweight, then a welterweight, then a lightweight, then a flyweight or bantamweight or whatever. Kenny Florian was a very good fighter. And Kenny Florian was, during the time of his fighting days, was known to be kind of mentally weak anytime he got close to either having a #1 contender slot or fighting for the belt. And I think that the UFC puts so much pressure on these different kind of these #1 contender fights that it causes these fighters to play it safe. Because the way that the UFC works out, I'm so sorry, this is not like Japan. Everything's about the gold. So if you're not trying to get a title in your given division, there's really not a whole lot that you can really do as a UFC fighter. You know, you're not there for really entertainment purposes all that much if you're trying to get paid. I feel that the UFC is still under, Joe Silva's matchmaking style is still under this whole, we're trying to make money matches and marketable matches, where that was a necessity back in the days where, you know, it was Tito and Chuck Liddell as their two major stars, and they was losing to Pride FC and K1 Heroes and stuff like that. But now that it's kind of become more in the mainstream, it needs to follow more mainstream rules, like having the champion, the #1 contender, the #2 contender, #3, and like your dark horse entertainment fighter. You know, it's like this. This should be the champion. The #1 and #2 should fight each other. The number three and like a dark horse, like, you know, someone who may not be the best out of all of them, but is either very, very entertaining or a stylistical nightmare for at least one of the contenders. Imagine like Keith Jardine back in 2008. You know what I mean? It's just, does anyone want to see Rory McDonald versus GSP right now? The answer I'm gonna say, unless you bet money on Rory McDonald and you won money, I don't think anyone is happy with that fight. I don't even think Rory McDonald is happy with that fight. I'm sure Jake Ellenberger isn't. It was fucking horrendous. Jake's issue is the fact that he has no sort of like kicking game whatsoever. I think he's just really looking to land those hooks, cutting on the inside, and that's caused his demise. But getting back to this whole matchmaking situation, I think if you just had it where there would be a situation where you had the champion and the #1, #2 contenders, and even given the fact with injuries or whatnot, injuries should not matter if you know, let's say the potential #2 contender is going to take on the #3 contender, right? And one of them ends up getting hurt. Whoever is the next available, you know, ranked person in their division, they should just move up. I don't think this whole thing, oh, there's injuries all the time, and Joe Silva, you know, he has to go and find out new ways how to do matchmaking. Complete bullshit. You should have a hard four. Champion, #1, #2, #3. A hard four people in every division, and then after that you have maybe the number, I don't know, 4 or 5 guy be like a dark horse. This is kind of like a Chael Sonnen, Nick Diaz kind of fighter, where even though they've lost the champion or former champion, they're still considered a top 5 fighter. Maybe because of their marketability, maybe because of their style. maybe because they're good at just recruiting other people who may be within the top 2 for the title contention. Something has to be done, because I'm not going to watch GSP versus Rory McDonald. I'm sorry. And what was going to have? Carlos Condit, we're going to fight Martin Kattman. Kattman's not up there in the title contention, so Carlos Condit fighting him doesn't really help him out in this UFC paradigm that they have. Assuming that GSP gets away from Johnny Hendricks with the belt, I'm still not excited to see McDonald versus GSP. It's not something I want to watch. But I can't blame Rory McDonald, because he had to fight that way. He had to fight that way. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, please go and watch the post-fight interview with Josh Koscheck versus Paul Daly, right after Josh kept defeated Daly and went on to become the #1 contender for the belt and fought GSP the second time. The UFC forces you to fight a certain way, and I just don't think it's relevant in this new age of MMA. So guys, please tell me what you think. Share with people who have a similar, passion for better matchmaking, because this is fucking awful. This really is. I mean, there's no marketable welterweight fights I want to see that have anything to do with the title contention. Take care.